Fake HOA cop slapped my mother in a diner. Didn't know her son was a Navy SEAL. The moment I saw that fake cop's hand connect with my mother's face through the diner window, something inside me switched off, the civilian part. What switched on was 8 years of Navy SEAL training, and this wannabe rent-a-cop had no idea what he just unleashed. But let me back up and tell you how a regular Tuesday breakfast turned into the worst mistake of this man's life. The fluorescent lights of Rosie's diner hummed their familiar tune as my mother, Linda, sat in her usual booth by the window. At 62, she still had that gentle smile that could light up a room, even on the dreariest Tuesday morning. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore her favorite lavender cardigan, the one I'd sent her from San Diego before my last deployment. I was home on leave after 8 years as a Navy SEAL, and Mom had insisted on treating me to breakfast at her favorite spot. I'd stepped outside to take a call from my commanding officer, leaving her to order our usual coffee, pancakes, and enough bacon to feed a platoon. Through the diner's large window, I watched her laugh at something the waitress said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. That's when I saw him approach her table. He was a tall man, probably in his late 40s, with a beer gut straining against a ridiculous pseudo-police uniform. The outfit was completely absurd, a navy blue security guard shirt with homemade patches sewn onto the shoulders that read, Meadowbrook HOA Enforcement. He wore a utility belt loaded with a flashlight, pepper spray, and what looked like zip ties. A cheap badge was pinned crookedly to his chest. I couldn't hear what he was saying from outside, but I could see my mother's expression change from pleasant surprise to confusion, then to discomfort. Her smile faded. She shook her head slightly, saying something I couldn't make out. The man leaned closer, jabbing his finger near her face. Other diners were starting to notice. An elderly couple 2 booths down craned their necks to see what was happening. The waitress, a young girl named Amber who'd been serving Mom for years, stood frozen behind the counter, holding a coffee pot midair. I ended my call abruptly and headed for the door, but I was still 30 feet away when everything changed. The fake cop grabbed my mother's purse from the seat beside her. "Sir, please give that back." Mom's voice carried through the glass, strained with a mixture of fear and indignation. "You're parked in a spot reserved for Meadowbrook residents only." The man bellowed loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "That's a $500 fine, and I'm confiscating your vehicle registration until payment is rendered." "This is a public diner parking lot," my mother protested, reaching for her purse. "I don't even live in Meadowbrook Estates. I live 3 blocks away on Sycamore Street." "Don't talk back to an officer," he roared. That's when he did it. His hand shot out and slapped my mother across the face. Not hard enough to knock her down, but hard enough to snap her head to the side and leave a red mark blooming on her cheek. Hard enough to make every protective instinct in my body explode like a flashbang grenade. I was through that door in 2 seconds flat. The diner fell into shocked silence. My mother's hand was pressed to her cheek, tears welling in her eyes, not from pain, but from the humiliation of being struck in public. The fake cop was still gripping her purse, his face twisted in ugly satisfaction. He didn't see me coming. "Step away from her." My voice was calm, controlled, the same tone I used when clearing hostile buildings in Ramadi. It carried an unmistakable edge of violence, held barely in check. The man spun around, his hand instinctively moving to the pepper spray on his belt. "This doesn't concern you, buddy. This woman is in violation of—" "That woman," I interrupted, closing the distance between us in 3 measured steps, "is my mother, and you just put your hands on her." I watched the color drain from his face as he took in my appearance. 6'2", 220 pounds of coiled muscle, fresh military haircut, and eyes that had seen things his suburban mall cop fantasies couldn't comprehend. Even in civilian clothes, I carried myself in a way that made people nervous when they should be. "I'm an HOA enforcement officer," he stammered, puffing out his chest in a pathetic attempt at authority. "I have the legal right to." "You're not a cop," I said flatly, positioning myself between him and my mother. "You're wearing a costume from a party store with homemade patches. Real law enforcement doesn't slap elderly women in diners." "I'm warning you, I have pepper spray." He fumbled with the canister on his belt, his hands shaking. In one fluid motion, I grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind his back with just enough pressure to make him gasp, and relieved him of the entire utility belt. The whole maneuver took maybe 2 seconds and caused exactly 0 harm beyond injured pride. His equipment clattered onto the table: flashlight, spray, zip ties, and a radio that was obviously just a toy. "Let me go. I'll have you arrested for assaulting an officer." "You're not an officer." I kept my voice level, but the diner was so quiet everyone could hear every word. "You're a middle-aged man playing dress-up, extorting people, and apparently committing battery against senior citizens. That's a felony. Travis." My mother's voice was small, uncertain. "Honey, I'm okay. Let him go." I glanced back at her, seeing the red mark still vivid on her pale cheek, and felt my jaw tighten. But she was right. I'd made my point. I released him with a slight push that sent him stumbling forward. "You're going to regret this," the fake cop snarled, rubbing his wrist. "I know people. Important people. The Meadowbrook HOA board has connections with the police chief, the mayor." "Call them," I said simply, pulling out my phone. "Better yet, let me call the actual police for you." His face went from red to white. "That won't be necessary." "Oh, I think it is." I was already dialing 911. A man in a fake uniform just assaulted my mother and attempted to extort money from her. They'll want to know about that. It wasn't assault. It was a disciplinary action for "You slapped a woman for parking in a public lot." I stepped closer, letting him feel the full weight of my presence. "A parking lot that isn't even in your HOA's jurisdiction. I checked the property lines online while watching you harass her. Rosie's Diner sits on commercial property owned by the Riverside County Zoning District. Your little kingdom doesn't extend here." The operator answered, and I calmly reported the incident while staring directly at him. I watched him deflate like a punctured balloon, the bravado evaporating as reality set in. "Officers are on the way," I told him after ending the call. "You're welcome to wait here with us, or you can run. Up to you." He chose to run, practically tripping over his own feet in his haste to reach the door. But Amber, the waitress, bless her heart, had locked it from behind the counter. "Sorry, mister," she said with a grim smile. "You're not leaving until the police get here. You hit Miss Linda. She tips 20% and always asks about my kid. You're garbage." The fake cop looked around wildly, seeing every face in the diner staring at him with disgust and anger. An elderly man near the back stood up, blocking the rear exit. A truck driver at the counter cracked his knuckles meaningfully. "This is illegal detention," he shrieked. "You can't hold me here." "We're not holding you," I said reasonably. "We're just a bunch of concerned citizens making sure you don't flee the scene of a crime before law enforcement arrives." Big difference. 3 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up outside. Real cops in real uniforms stepped inside, and I gave them a concise report while Amber and 4 other witnesses corroborated everything. My mother showed them the mark on her face, which had darkened to a bruise. One officer was even recording with a body camera, capturing the fake cop's increasing panic as he realized he couldn't lie his way out of this. "Do you have any proof you're authorized to enforce HOA rules?" the senior officer asked, examining the costume. "I'm on the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board," the man blustered. "I'm the head of the compliance committee. I have every right to." "To do what exactly?" the officer interrupted. "Impersonate law enforcement? Assault residents? Extort money? Sir, I don't care if you're president of your HOA. You're not a cop, and nothing in any HOA charter gives you the right to put your hands on someone or fake being a police officer." "But the board authorized me to enforce compliance with rules that only apply to HOA property," the officer said wearily, as if he'd dealt with this exact type before. "This isn't HOA property, and even if it were, enforcement means reporting violations to the board, maybe issuing fines through proper legal channels. It doesn't mean dressing up like officer-friendly and slapping people." They arrested him right there, reading him his rights while snapping on handcuffs. Watching him being let out in his ridiculous costume, head hanging in shame, felt more satisfying than any confirmed target elimination I'd ever made overseas. An hour later, Mom and I finally sat down to cold pancakes and lukewarm coffee, but neither of us cared. Her cheek was iced, and she was smiling again, really smiling. "I can't believe you did that," she said softly, squeezing my hand across the table. "My hero. Mom, you raised me to stand up to bullies." I squeezed back. He's lucky I showed restraint. 5 years ago, fresh out of BUD/S, I might not have been so gentle. She laughed, then winced, touching her cheek. "I'm glad you were here. I'll always be here when you need me," I promised. The next day, the local news ran a story about the arrest. Turned out this wasn't the fake cop's first offense. He'd been harassing non-HOA residents for months, using intimidation tactics to collect bogus fines that went straight into his pocket. The Meadowbrook HOA board claimed they'd only authorized him to send warning letters, not patrol like a vigilante. He was facing multiple charges: battery, impersonating an officer, extortion, and fraud. Mom's bruise faded within a week, but the story became legendary in our town. Rosie's Diner even put up a small sign: "No fake cops allowed. We support our real heroes." As for me, I went back to base knowing my mother was safer, that one bully had been stopped, and that sometimes the best way to serve your country is protecting the people you love from the small tyrants who think a costume makes them powerful. It doesn't. Power comes from restraint, integrity, and knowing when to act. That day, I acted for my mom, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.